There are different types of messages: informative messages, persuasive messages, expressive messages, and goodwill messages. Informative messages are meant to provide information and facts. The message must be extremely concise, easy to understand, and clear. Persuasive messages aim to persuade the recipient of a specific point of view or course of action. It should have a clear, measurable goal that can be observed. It should also be as specific as visible. Expressive messages focus on sharing feelings and emotions. A heartfelt conversation with a loved one or a social media post expressing frustration are examples of expressive messages. And lastly, goodwill messages are used to show compassion, generosity, and responsiveness in the workplace.
So, there are three purposes of message: to inform, to entertain, and to persuade. So, first is to inform. To effectively inform or educate an audience, messages should be objective and neutral. So overall, the purpose of informing through messages is to let the receivers know about something or magpahibalo. Although some messages can be subjective or opinionated, but the real importance or the essence of to inform lies in objectivity or walang kinikilingan, walang pinaprotektahan. Second is to entertain. To entertain an audience, the message should be light, short, and entertaining, with focus on pleasing them and making a point. So, to entertain aims to satisfy us, not just limited in making us happy. Entertain is sometimes misleading, as most people correlate it to joy or happiness. But entertainment can also be brought up through other emotions like fear, thrill, or sadness. As long as the message satisfies our expectations and needs, it is called entertainment. So lastly, to persuade. Persuading an audience involves changing their mindsets and beliefs and influencing them towards your stand. So, to persuade is to influence the receiver's point of view and encourage them to take action. Effective persuasion influences both the mindset and the actions of an individual.
Message transmission. There are basic components one must consider in transmitting a message with a purpose. The first one is have an objective. Before sending a message to an audience, one should ascertain its intended purpose. So, you should know what you want to say before speaking. An example of this is that if you're giving directions, your goal is to help someone reach a destination. The next one is consider your audience. To effectively communicate your message, consider how to connect with your audience and who are your main target. So in short, we should adapt our message based on who we are talking to. An example of this is that if you're explaining how to use a new app, you'd use simple words and terms to your grandparents than your tech-savvy friends. The third one is be clear. To deliver an informative speech, maintain a simple and direct presentation, and avoid ambiguous language, irrelevant details, unfamiliar jargon, and biased concepts. So, we should avoid unnecessary details or complicated words. An example of this is instead of saying, utilize the vehicular pathway adjacent to the supermarket, one should say, drive on the road next to the supermarket. With this, you're using the simple words instead of complicated ones. Another example of this is instead of saying, utilize the apparatus, simply say, use the tool. For a serious announcement, avoid jokes or slang, and for a fun announcement, keep the tone light and hearty. For the fourth one is check for understanding. Effective communication involves two-way exchange of information between the speaker and the audience. So with this, make sure your audience really gets your message, encourage questions and feedbacks. Another example of this is after presenting a new procedure at work, ask the question, does everyone understand the new steps or do you have any questions? This helps you know if you need to explain anything further.
Now we proceed for the reader and the audience. So, both the reader and audience receive messages differently, with the reader interpreting written messages through reading or looking, and the audience listening to oral messages. The reader plays a crucial role in providing interpretations, as they read with specific skills, varying in their source and method of receiving messages. So, readers and audiences receive messages differently because they engage with information in distinct ways. Readers interpret written messages by looking at and analyzing the text, using their own reading skills and comprehension abilities. Their understanding depends on factors like prior knowledge, reading speed, and interpretation style. On the other hand, audiences receive messages through listening, meaning their comprehension is influenced by tone, voice, and delivery, while readers have the freedom to pause, reread, and reflect on written messages. Audiences process information in real time, relying on the speaker's clarity and expression. This difference shapes how both groups understand and respond to the messages they receive. So, to simplify, readers see and interpret, audiences hear and absorb. So, as for the next slide, we have bottom up. So, bottom up is the act of reading only what the reader understands from the text or reading, so text to mind. So, bottom up reading means understanding a text based only on what the reader can grasp from the words and sentences without adding outside knowledge. It's like going from text to mind, focusing on details first before understanding the bigger meaning. As for top down, this reading technique is known as mind to text. When the reader applies previous knowledge to the content they are presently reading. So, top down reading is when the reader uses their prior knowledge to understand a text. It's called mind to text because they connect what they already know with what they are reading. Now, as for interactive, it is the combination of bottom up and top down processes. This process is commonly used when the reader already has prior knowledge about some parts of the text and is able to interpret it from mind to text. So, this combines both bottom up and top down processes, meaning bottom up, which is without any prior knowledge, just what the reader has only read, and top down processes is where it applies what you're reading to the what you're reading and you're applying the prior knowledge you have. So the reader uses prior knowledge to understand some parts while also focusing on details from the text itself. So as for the next slide, Krantz emphasizes that understanding the audience is crucial for determining the level of formality in writing. He suggests that knowing the audience's background helps tailor the messages to their needs, ensuring they can comprehend the material. This approach can be achieved by using contractions for informal writing or mechanics for formal technical writing. So, Krantz highlights that understanding the audience is key to choosing the right level of formality in writing. By considering their background, writers can adjust their language to ensure clarity. So, this can also include using contractions for informal writing or proper mechanics for formal technical writing. As for the next slide, different ways to help them understand your message. So first, keep the message simple but deep in meaning. Second, inspire, educate, and reinforce them. And the last, which is to use 21st century media and be unexpected. So to easily understand, despite it being already simple itself, to give a more in-depth example for that, for number one, which is to keep the message simple but deep in meaning, example, instead of saying success is achieved through persistent effort and unwavering determination, you could also say hard work pays off, which this shorter version is easy to understand, but it's also meaningful. As for inspire, educate, and reinforce them, a good message should not only provide information but also motivate and encourage the audience. People respond better when they feel inspired or when the message helps them learn something useful. So, reinforcing the message means repeating or emphasizing it in different ways so it sticks. Now, as for use 21st century media and be unexpected, so people today consume information through digital platforms like social media, videos, interactive content, and using these modern tools makes it easier to connect with your audience. So, as well as being unexpected means presenting the message in a unique or surprising way, which makes it even more engaging and memorable and not easily forgettable. Now, what do we do with messages? So, reading text convey messages which readers may assess differently, resulting in varying comprehension levels. These messages may come from various sources like books, periodicals, magazines, newspapers, journals, and online texts. They can be presented in various ways, and their interpretation can vary depending on their presentation. And clear text messages attract readers. So, we interpret, analyze, and understand messages from text. Readers may comprehend them differently based on how they are presented. Messages comes from sources like books, magazines, newspapers, journals, and online text. And basically, despite the different, since readers have a tendency to have differences in terms of how they interpret certain sentences, which could also lead to different interpretations. So, with the help of clear text messages, it could help clarify what the text is actually intending. So, if we were to put an example to that, for example, the teacher said the student is brilliant. One interpretation could be that the teacher genuinely means what they're saying, so they truly believe that the student is intelligent. Another interpretation could be the teacher is being sarcastic and actually means the opposite. So, with the sentence, the teacher said the student is brilliant, one way you could say that the teacher actually means it. Another interpretation could mean that they're being sarcastic. So, with this, especially how the reader can have a tendency that they could interpret a certain sentence in a different way, this could cause some form of um, problem because the readers would be conflicted on what that sentence could actually mean. But if you use clear and concise um, sentences, text messages for a single interpretation, such as the teacher praised the student for their intelligence. So now this version removes ambiguity and ensures the audience understands that the teacher is actually giving praise. Now, as for the next slide, how do culturally diverse learners respond to these texts? So, Hemp Lyons and Kroll found that essay readers from different cultures responded to essays in different ways. This appeared to be a partial attribute to their linguistic or rhetorical backgrounds. This becomes an issue then. The factors affecting varied interpretations of text are social, environment, home environment, cultural environment, experiences, intellectual level, and language differences. So, culturally diverse learners interpret text differently, especially based on their language, background, and experiences. So, Hamp Lyons and Kroll found that cultural and linguistic differences influence how essays are understood. Factors like social environment, home life, cultural experiences, intellectual level, and language affect how readers interpret text. So that's all for the readers and the audience.
Hi, today we're gonna be talking about ways to use to convey messages from various text reads. Um, First, um, a well-defined message should be clear, easy to understand, and brief. The better we at analyzing media, the more we can grasp its deeper meaning. This help us understand what's really being communicated and even control how we let it affect us. So in social media, images are frequently used to enhance storytelling and convey values. We can see this on for example, like seeing a meme uh a meme shows a story but in a funnier way. So that's how it is being shown by using graphic messages to convey the idea of the story. Next, the key concepts of the media literacy framework serves as a basis for developing a critical understanding of the content of mass media. The techniques used and the impact of these techniques. Also, the key concepts of the media literacy can be very helpful in the construction of media text for different purposes. So, the term text includes any form of written, spoken, or other media conveying meaning to an audience. Text may use words, graphics, sounds, and images to present information. So just what like said earlier. So here are the key concepts. First, all media messages are contracted. So you guys must have already know about this. So next, values and points of view are embedded by media. Like what lifestyles, values, and points of view are presented in the text. Uh, Next, each person interprets the message differently. So you must consider that each person will uh, um, interpret the message differently. So yeah, it is said clearly. Number four, media have commercial, ideological, or political interest. So yeah, and lastly, media messages are constructed using a creative language having its own rules. So media messages is uh it is constructed by uh using creative language have so for example what you see in text in social media, like for example in Facebook, you will often see words or messages that are not usually used in our daily lives, but uh, they um they put it in their posts. So uh, by construction, uh, they've created their own way of conveying messages, but somehow different. Like for shortening phrases like uh 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 like t t uh TYT And basically, TYT means is take your time. So just to show you guys how it is uh how it is being conveyed. So lastly, messages in the media, a clearly defined message consists of two essential elements: clarity, ease of understanding, and briefness. Highly media literate individuals can see more in messages, understand deeper levels of meaning, and control their mental codes. So, what this talk about is those of people who have a higher understanding, let's say, in analyzing media text. They are so Of course, they are more likely to appreciate messages, thereby fulfilling the goals of higher understanding, control, and appreciation. So, one good example of this is us teens. Um, we we easily understand um so uh um messages in the media because we often use it as a platform to connect with everyone. So that is all, and thank you.